All right, chicos, so today we're going to be talking about reflexive verbs. Now, a reflexive verb is used to indicate that the subject does something to or for himself or herself. So what does this mean? It means that whoever is doing the action and the action in itself falls back into the person who's speaking, okay? It reflects back. So basically, it reflects the action of the verb back to the subject. And another important thing is that reflexive verbs always use reflexive pronouns. Now here are some examples. Joaquín se ducha por la mañana. So Joaquín is our subject. Se ducha is a reflexive verb. Se ducha means takes a shower. And the person, Joaquín, is doing the action, but the action itself falls back into Joaquín because he's taking a shower himself. That's why it's called reflexive, because the action reflects back to the subject. Now let's look at how we conjugate this verb. So we have lavarse, okay? And then what we're going to do is that the first thing we do is we take away the se. That se at the end of our infinitive, we're going to take it off. And then we're left with lavar. And then that we're just going to conjugate like a normal verb. So lavo, lavas, lava, lavamos, lavais, lavan. And then what you're going to do is take that reflexive verb and we're going to put it in the front and change it for the reflexive verb that goes with the subject pronoun. So for yo, it would be me. For tú, te. For él, ella, usted, se. Nosotros or nosotras, nos. Vosotros or vosotras, hoy, os. And then ellos, ellas, and ustedes, se. And that's all we have to do to be able to conjugate a reflexive verb. Now the pronoun se, when we find an infinitive and you see that the infinitive has that pronoun at the end, it means that it's a reflexive verb. So lavarse, cambiarse, secarse, limpiarse, whatever is it that you use and it has that se at the end, it's telling you that this is an infinitive verb. I mean, a reflexive verb, and therefore you're going to have to use a reflexive pronoun when we're conjugated. Now, you're going to conjugate your verb like normal. So if your verb is a stem changing verb, you're going to keep that in mind when you do a reflexive verb. If the verb is irregular, for example, irse, we know that the verb ir is it's an irregular verb. So when we conjugate it as a reflexive verb, we conjugate that as an irregular verb. So for voy, I would say me voy. So I still conjugate ir like voy, and then I put me at the beginning. So I just keep all of those things in mind. Now, when a reflexive verb is conjugated, the reflexive pronoun has to agree with the subject. That's a very important thing, guys. Your reflexive pronoun has to agree with your subject. So, for example, me afeito. Afeito is conjugated for yo, and it's using the reflexive pronoun me to imply it's me, like I do it myself. Me afeito, I shave myself, basically is what you're saying. Te despiertas, you wake yourself up. That's what you're saying. Now, like an object pronoun, reflexive pronouns generally are going to appear before the conjugated verb. That's what we say me afeito, and I don't say afeito me. It's always at the beginning, or generally, it's always going to be in front of the conjugated verb. But there's a few times when it's going to be a little bit different. When we're using infinitives and present participles, for the present progressive, for example, you have the choice to place it before the conjugated verb or attached to the infinitive or the present participle. Now, let's talk about one with infinitives. A common one would be when we're using the verb ir. If we're saying ir a and then a reflexive verb, that would be using it as an infinitive. So what we're going to do is, for example, ellos se van a vestir. So know that vestirse is your reflexive verb, yes? The person doing the action is ellos. So the reflexive pronoun we're going to use is se because that's the one that goes with ellos. And we have the option of putting it before the conjugated verb, which in this case is a verb ir, or we can attach it to the infinitive, which would be vestir. Now, in this case, again, you say vestirse because ellos is your subject. If I was talking about myself, I would say yo voy a vestirme or me voy a vestir. So I would use me for your reflexive pronoun. And in both of these occasions, it means they're going to get dressed. Now, if we're talking about the present progressive and we're using a participle, again, I can use it before the conjugated verb, which is estamos. Nos estamos lavando las manos. Or I could use it, attach it to the end of the present participle. Estamos lavándonos las manos. We are washing our hands. So same thing. Now here's very important when we're attaching it to a participle that we have to keep this in mind. When we attach it to a present participle, an accent mark has to be added to maintain that original stress so it sounds the same way as before. For example, estamos lavándonos las manos. And it's always going to be, technically, if you count the syllables, is going to be, I'm so sorry for my dog, is going to be the third syllable from last. So if you notice, we're here, 1, 2, 3, and that's the syllable where we attach that accent mark. And it's so that it would sound the same. Because if we don't put that accent mark, it could be something like lavándonos or lavándonos. I mean, that would not make sense. So to keep that same stress, we're going to say lavándonos, and we need that accent mark. So example, bañando, bañándose, durmiendo, durmiéndose. So if you notice, it keeps the stress in the same place. Now, unlike in English, a number of verbs in Spanish can be reflexive or non-reflexive. So we have some verbs in Spanish that we can use reflexive or non-reflexive. Now, here's how we know. If the verb acts upon the subject, so if the action goes back to the subject, then we're going to use that reflexive form. But if the action falls into something else other than the subject, then we're going to use the non-reflexive. So for example, Lola lava los platos. And in this case, Lola is washing the dishes. The action, lavar, it's falling under the dishes, not under Lola. But when I say Patricia se lava la cara, it says Patricia washes her face, right? Se lava is going into the face of Patricia. Yes, you could say, well, the face is like a noun. Yes, but it's her face. It reflects back to that same person. So that's why we're using that reflexive. And like those sentences show, reflexive verbs sometimes have different meanings that their non-reflexive counterpart. For example, lavar in this case just means to wash, and lavarse means to wash oneself or to wash up. So we have to look into that as well. Now, when we're using parts of the body or clothing, we are not going to refer to them with possessive adjectives. We're actually just going to use it with articles. So I would not say, la niña se quitó su zapato. I would say, la niña se quitó un zapato, or el zapato. So I'm going to use definite or indefinite articles. Necesito cepillarme los dientes. So I'm not going to say, necesito cepillarme mis dientes. I would just say, necesito cepillarme los dientes. That's the way we just do that in Spanish when it comes to referring to parts of the body or clothing with a reflexive pronoun. All right, chicos, so now you're going to go to conjuguemos.com and you're going to do some of that practice on reflexive verbs. I want 5 minutes of practice. You have to do the graded practice, so please make sure you're looking at that. And then you're going to go to SpanishDict.com and you're going to do the reflexive verbs and reflexive pronouns. Remember, this is practice. Some of it you might not understand, like what the verb means, but I just want you to practice the process of conjugating reflexive pronouns. Okay, chicos, and reflexive verbs. All right, chicos. Hasta luego.